you've either had exposure to these concepts or you haven't. So we're going to kind of roll with that. Okay? What you can't do, this is kind of like a psychological game. Okay? What you can't do is get to the math portion and assume that you suck and start to get down on yourself, because that will impact how you take the entire rest of the test. You kind of have to like get hard inside. You know what I mean? You got to like get okay with sucking on some stuff and be okay anyway. And that's kind of, it's like it's psychology. Mental strength. Meditation. We'll do plenty of that, don't you worry. Okay, so these are the big differences between the old one and the new one. And then if you look over on the right, all the words over there, you can see the sections. So there's an evidence-based reading and writing section. Instead of just calling it reading and writing, they're calling it evidence-based, which should tell you something right there. Okay, this is going to be a major component of this section. One of the biggest components, especially on the reading portion, is words in context. This is vocab, kids. The SAT is very vocab heavy. Anybody do vocab in English? Oh, so not many. I thought most English teachers did vocab, no? Oh, they knew. Okay, well, even for classes that do vocab, a lot of times high school vocabulary is not what this is. We've discussed my education and my background. And by the way, I'm a bookworm. Anybody in here else like a big reader, like for pleasure? I love to read. It's been my thing since I was a kid. And hey, don't you judge me, and don't judge anybody who doesn't like it either. I don't think that's like a right or a wrong thing. It's just like a personal preference thing. I really dig reading, which means my vocabulary is extensive. Sorry, it just is. Not to brag, but it's huge. Like I can do Jeopardy and like I'm down. But there are words on these practice SAT tests that I have never seen before. And if you know anything about my vocab, you should know that's kind of surprising. And that should also indicate the level of the vocabulary to you. Okay? They're going to say this is high school level vocabulary. I guarantee you it is not. It is college level vocabulary, in some case master's level vocabulary. There are going to be words on here you have never seen before, but they're still going to ask you to define them. Okay? Which is why we're going to start using things like context clues. You remember this? From like 3rd grade? You haven't really needed to like figure out what a word means in a really long time because you have like a phone. You know what I mean? Like if you come across a word you don't know, just type it in and it'll define it for you. That's totally fine. You won't have that on the SAT. So we're gonna have to think of old school strategies to figure out what words mean. Context clues, root words, right? What does this word look like? We're gonna talk about all of that kind of stuff to figure out what this word means, because there are legit questions on the SAT that say the most likely definition of this word in line 4 is bang, 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 and they give you 4 choices. And these words are huge. Okay, so we're gonna do a lot of vocab in here for test prep, by the by, just so you know. Not teaching you vocab words and asking you to memorize them, because I think that's kind of useless, because unless I'm guaranteeing you they're gonna be on the test, you're memorizing a lot of words you're not gonna need to know. But how to figure out what words mean. Okay, and that's like a skill, so we're going to be teaching you that. The other portion here is command of evidence. Not only are they going to ask you, like, in line 4, what is the most likely meaning of this? They're going to ask you why. In line 4, what does the author mean when he says this? And you say, oh, he means that. And they're going to go, how do you know that? What else in the reading shows you that that answer is right? And that's a little yikes. A lot of times teenagers are used to like click an A and then like moving on, but almost every time they ask you to click a letter, they're then going to ask you why. The next question will be, why did you put A? Show me what made you put A. Okay, and that's different. That's that's a skill. That's figuring out how to back up what you're saying, and that's a really big part of the reading and writing portion. Another big part of the writing portion, I keep saying writing, and that's not the essay. Does that make sense? There's a reading/writing, and there's a math, and then there's an essay. Okay? For the reading/writing, the things I just talked about in the reading portion. For the writing, we're talking about editing. Is what that is. We're talking about composition. They're going to show you passages, and I'm going to show you examples in a second so you can kind of see what that looks like. They're going to show you passages, they're going to underline part of it, and they're going to say, what's wrong with this passage? Is there something wrong? And then if there is, what should it look like? A, B, C, D. kind of make sense? Do you guys do that in English? Do you edit things? Do you write papers? Papers, like not essays. Do you get the difference? Not like 5-paragraph essays. I'm talking papers, like multiple page papers. You write those? Okay, good. And then do you get graded on things like that? On like where, like grammar and punctuation and all that kind of stuff? There's a lot of you that are looking at me like I'm crazy right now. Is that because you don't get graded on that, or because you don't know? So we're talking about the people that are saying you write a lot of papers, like are you in like AP?
I just switched out AP. Oh yeah, Tiana. We've written a paper, we're working on an essay, and we just got introduced to our next inquiry project. This is nice. Yeah.
What's AP? Who teaches AP? Okay. Who teaches regular? Who are the teachers that teach that?
Cantola.
Pomerantz, Klein, Cohen. I'm sorry.
Every teacher feels that way.
Yeah.
Every time a teacher says it.
Do all of you have quotes? Because everyone's laughing right now, or do you just know? You just
know.
For history. For U.S. history.
Yeah, I'm
for
history.
And then for English, I have them 3.5 hours.
in a row?
In a row.
They're not back to back.
They are back to back.
Today? Like on B days?
No, on A days.
Oh. Okay. Okay. So if you're in regular English, what I'm hearing is you probably don't do a ton of papers and you don't do a ton of editing. Is that what I'm kind of hearing? Maybe not a lot of emphasis. To be honest, most high school English classes, even if you do write papers, they grade them, and you're not being graded on that kind of stuff. Does that kind of make sense? Like if you're writing like persuasive paper, they might check and make sure, like they'll grade you on like if you did like a claim properly, like you know what I mean? They might grade you on evidence, but a lot of times, it sounds weird, but a lot of high school English teachers don't necessarily edit your papers for you. They don't say like, well, your semicolon should have been here, or like, you know what I mean? They don't do stuff like that in their grading. Does that make sense? Which, that's what you're gonna have to do on the SAT. Which is difficult to do if you don't have a whole lot of experience with it, okay? This, a lot of times, you guys, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about here has nothing to do with your intelligence. Nothing at all. It has everything to do with if you've even been exposed to any of this before, which is completely out of your control. And I get that. And yes, that's part of what sucks. So I have a lot of kids that are like, no, I never love kids. They're like, I don't want to say that because it makes me sound stupid. No, it doesn't. It makes you sound like you've never been taught how to do it. Totally different than being stupid. Okay? The other part of this, we're gonna get to math later. I'm gonna kind of like with math for now because I can't even. One of the big things though that we need to talk about is the fact that there is science and social studies on the SAT. And a lot of people don't know that because it's not one of your categories. You know what I mean? There's no science category because science and history are in the reading and writing categories. Here's the kicker. It's not just an article on science where they'll say like, is this like written properly? Where does the period go? You have to know about those science and history content areas in order to answer that question. This is where we get a little sketchy. Okay? Science, have all of you have done bio, right?
Yeah.
Everybody? Have you all done chem?
Nope.
What are you in junior year? Whatever you want. There's a lot of options, right? But you all have to take bio. See, and this is where the science portion is honestly kind of one of the easiest because most of the science content is biology. Most kids did really well in the science portion because it's all kind of basic, it's like photosynthesis, and you know what I mean? It's the stuff that you've probably gotten a couple times now that's pretty basic, okay? The stuff that you're getting in history seems to be a flaw as well. and I say this with great pain because you know this is my jam, especially US. My master's is in US, so this is like what I live for. And I get that makes me sound like a gigantic nerd, and I'm okay with that. But there are United States founding documents on the SAT, if you know what that means. So we're talking about like Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Common Sense, like the Federalist Papers, things like that. Okay, they're gonna be on there that you're gonna have to analyze. This is uncomfortable for most teenagers because they're written weird. You know what I mean? Fancy language, unnecessarily complicated, that's how they were written. Unless you like have a lot of experience reading documents like that, heyo, it looks funny to you, okay? The other problem is big portions of the reading section this last SAT were on the United States history in the 1960s, which there are several problems with this. One of the problems is all the juniors are in US history, but the 1960s, if your teacher can even get to it, because a lot of times you can't, because that's a little too far along. If you can get to it, that's in May. We give you the SAT in April. The other problem seems to be that there are, I'm gonna say this as carefully as I can, with great respect for everyone I love in this building. There are some history classes that don't do the normal content. Okay, you're seeing what I'm saying. We're having a really nice non-verbal conversation right now, but I feel like you're reading my mind. Okay, super. For those classes, we've got major issues because you're not getting a lot of times the really basic US history stuff that you're supposed to already have that you're gonna be tested on here, and you need to know the content in order to be able to answer the questions. It's not just define the word in line 4. They're asking you like about the writer's motivations. Why did the writer write this? What was happening in the nation that made them feel like they needed to give this speech or whatever? And if you don't know what was happening in the nation during that time, you can't answer that question. Kind of seeing what I'm saying? So we've got some content gaps happening here as well, which is why, again, we're going to spend a lot of time on test-taking strategies and context clues and all that kind of stuff, and see if you can answer things without having the content knowledge. Because I'm going to assume that you don't, which sounds awful, but I'll How are we doing so far? Yeah.
On the essay, are you graded on spelling, punctuation, or content?
Almost always it is content, unless there are what they usually call egregious errors. There's a fun vocab word for you. You know what egregious means? Egregious means so bad to the point of not being readable. If they can't get to your content through your grammatical mistakes, then they're going to dock you there. But as long as it's legible, usually they don't go through and edit it. They just do it based on, did you follow the instructions and content.
How much does the essay impact the grade of the essay?
It's not factored into your score.
Okay.
It's not part of your composite score.
Okay.
This would be like if colleges wanted to use it for scholarship purposes, then that would be something they could look at. But otherwise, there's a 800-point reading-writing score. That's multiple choice. And there's an 800-point math score for your composite of up to 1,600. Does that make sense? Other questions? Yeah. I'd try on the first one and just see. I think you're gonna is what it said. Like I said, colleges, honestly, between you and me, almost always won't care about the essay. That doesn't mean don't try. Just in case they really like it and they might want to give you a scholarship, try. But in terms of like admissions and overall academic scholarships, they're looking at scores, they're looking at numbers. Okay? Okay, this breaks it down a little bit more for you in case you wanted it. You see the category on the left, and then the old SAT and the new SAT. So we've got, again, total testing time there. We've got all the components listed there and the differences. We've got important features, and I want to kind of stop you on the